hear you.
Great.
Isn't that the most important thing? I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. It's not. It's that everybody else can hear us.
Of course. Yeah, we have to all hear each other. So how's it going?
It's going great. I just feeling the language like energy right now. I don't know. It's been a good day, good morning, and I'm excited to talk about this fun topic, learning a language in 2016. It's not even December yet, and we're still we're getting into it. So we don't do like most people and around Thanksgiving kind of just die off for the rest of the year. We're grinding. We're trying to spread the energy and the language love so people can get started on or off to the right start for the beginning of the year.
Exactly. Yeah. We're looking forward, and even though it's Friday the 13th, which is kind of a spooky day.
Yeah. Just didn't realize that.
We're both wearing kind of dark colors, but not that that's but hopefully that isn't a negative omen for the future. But no. We're looking ahead, and that's a great point that you made. Sometimes it's true, over the holidays things really slow down.
Yeah.
People sometimes say, oh, well, I'll stop learning languages over the holidays. I'll just be with my family, which that's fine. You can do that if you want, but why not do both?
Right. Yeah, it's tough too because everybody's kind of doing the same thing as far as it's more about shopping and taking work off, planning for those long weekends, the holidays, the food, the eating, and it's easy to forget. So maybe we can incorporate, as we kind of talk about generally how we would suggest learning a language or acquiring certain techniques, but also maybe for these last 6 weeks of the year, maybe things that people could do during the holidays to take advantage of their friends and family. Maybe people are traveling also at this time of year, so that's an opportunity for them to learn too.
Fantastic. I think that would be a wonderful topic for this conversation that we have next week, if you're willing to do it.
That's true. Yeah, we can also split it up and make sure that we can kind of keep it focused, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, tentatively, we will see, but tentatively, possibly at this time on this day next week, we will have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, that's a fantastic idea. But today, we're here to talk about language learning in 2016. How to learn a language in 2016. So let's start this off by talking a little about the past, which seems counterintuitive, but it matters, right?
Well, why don't you, before we do that, even just tell a little about yourself, and maybe you can introduce where we're coming from, to just give people a background too, because that's important.
Of course it is. Excuse me, sorry about that. My name is Sam. I am one of the two founders of Linguas Francas, which is an online language school. I teach English to entrepreneurs and professionals around the world to help them reinvent their businesses and themselves. How about you?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a cool way of describing what you do, actually. Very nice. I'm Ruben, and I'm a pronunciation coach and also a language instructor too, but I like to focus on pronunciation. I help lots of language learners and teachers develop more of a kind of a natural sounding pronunciation or a native-like pronunciation in English and Spanish, Portuguese, and even Hebrew most recently. And all of this is an attempt to build confidence and avoid the frustrations that are involved with speaking with somebody new, and just generally creating positive first impressions, because I found that pronunciation, and I'll talk a lot about this today, pronunciation is a nice, easy way to kind of have a facade or a nice, again, first impression for people to feel like, or at least they can judge you in a positive way instead of worrying about all the other, hey, Henry's here. All the other kind of things that go along with judgment, stereotypes of accents. We all have these stereotypes of what people sound like, and kind of saying, okay, well, this person must be X. And so,
welcome, Henry.
Henry, what's going on?
Going good.
we just to
Doing
kind of
good.
introduce ourselves, I wondered if Henry could do the same. Henry's a friend of mine I've met online through language, through passions for language, and maybe Henry can tell a little bit about yourself too.
Well, I'm Henry from Colombia. I'm a sociologist, and in the last 6 years, I developed or discovered a passion for languages. So I've been trying to improve my English, and I've been learning by myself French and German.
Pretty
Great.
intense. And I love Henry. Speaking of that, Henry's accent, when I first heard him too, it's like, whoa, pretty nice, pretty natural. And it's always, for me, it's always a thing to kind of get a sense of people's abilities by their pronunciation. So Henry, you're awesome.
Of course. Especially when you first meet someone and then hear improvements in their accent. If you're the one working with them, it makes you feel so great about yourself.
Oh, totally.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But, yeah. So it's interesting that you're teaching yourself French and German. One of the things I think we should probably talk about a little bit is how to teach yourself and how that is different now, how it used to be, or how maybe it will be in the future. So, how to learn a language in 2016. That's the topic of today. Let's start by looking into the past a little bit. So how did people used to learn languages? Like, how did our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-great-grandparents learn languages? What do you guys think?
Yeah, and it's tough to say because obviously, cultures have been colliding and trying to interact and for ages, but it's hard to say. I think that people utilized repetitive recordings. I think that's kind of a common thing. At least I noticed. I don't know about grandparents, but because my grandparents weren't big language learners, but I'm sure there were in that time. But using audio materials if they're available, and probably just the few native speakers that you might have had around you, or maybe you're traveling to a different country, but that's probably really expensive at that time and very rare. So probably not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's definitely true.
I think in the past people were more dependent on like the traditional ways to learn something, like the relationship teacher-student. So, and now you're more able to do it by yourself with the things you can get from the internet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, even before there were audio recordings, people pretty much just had textbooks. Right. Occasionally they would meet a native speaker, like you were saying, Ruben. They would have teacher-student relationships, like you were saying, Henry. And occasionally people would travel to a different country, which was a great way to learn. But people used to just read grammar books, memorize, rote learning, which is just you read something, you repeat it, you write it down, and you just repeat until it sticks in your mind. I don't know about you guys, but I think that sounds incredibly boring, personally.
Well, it is. And actually, nowadays, I still can find that kind of material on the internet, but I try to avoid those.
Me too.
Yeah, but I think it's in certain cultures too, focusing on grammar and the structure is still a big thing. I mean, I know a lot of people who learn English, especially in a lot of Asian countries, China for sure, Japan, Korea. It's very heavily focused on that book, and their non-native teacher relying on that text material because the access to native speakers is still pretty. I mean, the population's only growing, right? The students are more and more people are learning, and so it's tough to reach everybody with the right resources.
Completely. And there's nothing wrong with teaching grammar. I think teaching grammar is essential, even when you do have access to native speakers, at least sometimes, not always, but that doesn't mean you should always learn only grammar or anything like that. I think a combination of different areas is probably best. Also, it depends on the learner, in my experience. For example, one of my really good friends growing up, who's a polyglot and speaks, I think, around 20 languages right now.
Whoa.
His way of learning is he reads grammar books, finds out the rules of the language, and then starts applying them. That's just his method.
Mm.
It works for him. It doesn't seem to work for very many other people I've met, but it works really well for him, and he can keep it all straight in his mind if he has the rules of grammar for each of the 20 languages he speaks. But everyone's different. And then on the other hand, I have another close friend who I learned, actually, when I first learned Spanish, it was at the same time as this friend. And he learned completely the opposite way, just 100% through immersion. He dove into conversations, tried to speak, even if he didn't know how to say things. And within a month, he could have conversations about basically anything with anyone, except he didn't know anything about grammar, so he spoke incorrectly constantly, but he could have conversations, which was incredible. You know, he went from 0 to full conversations in one month without perfect grammar, but he could communicate, you know. So, and everyone is different. Everyone has their own learning style, in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess they're both kind of types of immersion, though, too. The grammar and the speaking, you're still immersing yourself, but in completely different ways, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, in my case, I think I'm more like the first case that you described, because I have met people like the second case. They just start talking. They know they're making mistakes, but they try. They push themselves to say the words to express the idea. But I'm stuck if I don't know the proper grammar. I'm like, no, this is not correct. I should say it in another way, but I can't find that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. For me, it helps to know rules. If I'm wondering, if I learn something new and it seems strange, I want to know why. Mm-hmm. But I like to learn the rule after I learn the example that makes the rule relevant. I don't like to just memorize rules. You know, I like to have a reason to actually learn the rule, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So now, so in the past we were talking about people had less access than today. Mm-hmm. So what kinds of things do we have that our grandparents did not have? What do you guys think? In terms of ways to learn language?
A lot of stuff. I mean, not only do we have a more, globalized society where people are moving around, it's cheaper to move around. It's more common to study or travel abroad. It's common to, know people who speak different languages to begin with, or to grow up in a multilingual society. Maybe not in certain parts of the U.S., but in a lot of places in the world, you see bigger cities, more diversity, and you, at the very least, have access to a couple words. You know some things, whether they're going to help you learn the language or not. But that's the main things that stick out to me. What do you guys think?
For example, in my case, in my city, there are much more opportunities to practice languages. So there are much more visitors and people organizing language exchange meetings. So there are more chances to interact with people and actually use the language you're learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, how about what are we doing right now?
Talking about language for video conferencing.
Absolutely could not do this. And we are in 3 different cities. Excuse me, sorry. Go ahead, Henry.
No, I was saying that I was going to say that actually I never imagined myself doing this, like talking in English with people about learning languages.
Yeah,
it's lots of fun, right? People are maybe also seeing the positive sides more quickly or more soon in life, benefits of learning a language, whereas it may have been in the past more of a requirement for school, or just feeling like a pressure to do it for work, again, if you're working in an international company too. But now it's like, it's fun. You get to meet friends, you get to video chat with people. It's such the barriers are broken down a lot faster and sooner in your life.
Yeah, because people are more connected. They have like more interest in learning a language. So now it's not just about business or studies.
Hmm. Absolutely. You know, I think one of the best ways to learn a language is not just to go about trying to learn the language directly, but to use the language to do something that you love, or to use the language to learn something else. For example, this is something that a lot of European countries are starting to implement in their education systems, which is teaching science in English, for example, teaching history in English in these countries. Obviously, it's not the only history class you have, but by doing that, you encourage students to speak in English, to think in English, to interact in English, and all of that. And in this kind of way, you don't have the same. English is not limited to just, foreign languages. It enters into all aspects of your life that you let it, which is really fantastic, I think.
Yeah, that's true. It'd be kind of cool. I was thinking about this. We have 3 different backgrounds. And Sam speaks four or five languages. Henry 3, 4 or 5. Probably at least we're all around that 4, 5, 6 mark. Maybe pushing on 6 and 7. Thinking for the future for 2016. We're getting the next language in our minds, right? In our sights. Mm-hmm. What if we went around and just said, like, if we had to give 3 tips or 3 quick, lessons that we've learned from all of our language learning at this point? It's not just necessarily tips, but just based on experience.
Before we do that, Yusuf is calling in. Let's let him participate and say hello.
Oh, I'd love to.
Hi, Yusuf.
Hi, guys. Hi.
How's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. What about you?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing great. Talking about languages, I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, I'm learning English, by the way.
Nice. Where are you from, Yusuf?
I am from Morocco.
Wow, nice.
Morocco, great. Where in Morocco?
What?
I'm sorry?
Which city?
Which city in Morocco?
El Jadida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And you?
I've been to Tangier, but I haven't spent very much time in Morocco. I was only there for a few days, unfortunately.
Where exactly?
In Tangier.
In Tangier, the north. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the north.
Nice.
That's where my dad was born, Tangier, Morocco.
Really?
Yeah. I'm half Moroccan.
Yusuf,
Yusuf, we're basically brothers, Can you tell? I can't tell what you look like, but I imagine. Well, from the small picture I can. But.
Oh.
Well, welcome. We were just talking about different tips that we have to learn language.
Yeah.
And Ruben asked if we could each say 3 things. I believe that was the question, correct? 3 things that help us learn languages?
Yeah, I suppose that works for everybody.
Sure.
I'm trying different resources to learn English. So, and Blab, one of them.
Nice.
Blab is one of them.
Does Blab work for you? What's your take on it, Yusuf? What's worked for you and what hasn't?
Oh, here in Blab, I practice my speaking skills, especially with native speakers. So when you speak with native speakers, it's better than study English for 1 week. Practice 1 hour is better than study English for 1 week. I read this information somewhere, so I'm trying to practice it with native speakers. By the way, I speak Arabic and French as well, and now I'm learning English.
Excellent.
Très bien.
Yeah.
So we're all multilingual here.
Yes.
Sorry?
We are all multilingual here. It's great to have you.
So, Roman, what's the second language?
My second language is Spanish, and I speak Italian. I speak Brazilian Portuguese and Hebrew.
Oh.
So all those,
cool.
and in English, of course. I'm trying to get Japanese and Korean. Those are my next 2 in my sites.
Oh, I'm trying to learn Japanese, but it's a little bit hard. So I started with the hiragana. I think it was stuck there for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, but once you get that stuff down, it's nice and maybe easier because the alphabet is a big barrier, right?
Yeah. So once
from Arabic too.
What?
Like from Arabic to English or from Arabic to French, as you.
Yeah. That's right.
Both.
That's right. So
those are some great learning tips. Henry, what do you find works for you when you want to learn languages or practice?
I read somewhere that if you want to learn a language, you have to listen a lot, just like a little baby when he was younger. So he learned the language from listening. And
that's true. That's a fantastic technique. Yeah. Listening a lot. I do that all the time. That's one of mine, actually. One of my tricks. So how about you, Henry? What do you like to do?
I think a good thing to do is to start using everything that you learn. If you just learn how to say hello, how are you, once you get the chance to really use that, use it, right? Because some people is all the time saying like, oh no, I don't have enough vocabulary to say things, and they keep that way. So they never really use what they have already learned.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. The expression we have in English, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's actually true, but sometimes it feels like it is true. You know, you learn something and then you don't ever use it, it goes away. And then you see it again, you say, oh, I remember now. But if you just used it in the first place, maybe it wouldn't go away.
Yeah, and actually it works to really stick the words, the expressions in your brain, because you use them in a real context, in a real situation. So that's better than just memorizing words or concepts.
So would you like to tell us some of your tips, Ruben?
Yeah, I'd love to. Obviously, I love to talk about it. There's lots of things that go through my mind. It depends on the person, of course, and the situation, which language you're learning, from which language. And I think, one thing that Henry brought up about just being the kind of person who doesn't want to say, I don't have a lot of vocabulary. And we always find people who say, oh, I'm not a language person, or I don't have an ear for the language, or I don't do this well. It's hard to, put yourself in that category and try to fight yourself out of it. Oh, I'm not a language person. Well, the goal is to learn the language. And even if you're not a math person, let's say, for example, it doesn't mean you couldn't build skills or do some research instead of kind of blocking yourself into that label of not a language person. So honestly, the 2 or 3 things that I would suggest, I'm also going off of Tim Ferriss. If you guys are familiar with Tim Ferriss, he's the author of the 4-Hour Work Week, is a world-renowned blogger, and now he has his own show. And he has a post in a very, very effective worksheet on how to learn a foreign language. And it's basically, I'm going off the blog too, is basically, ideally, the system, it comes down to 3 different things, which are effectiveness, adherence, and efficiency. So being able to, prioritize the right things. A lot of times we have this idea that building vocabulary is necessary. And so we just learn the most random vocabulary, all the vegetables and all the, animals, before thinking about what language we actually use every day, right? So just kind of figuring out, prioritizing the right materials, the right, before you find the resources, figuring out what is it going to be used for. Are you learning the language for business? Is it for travel? Is it for really just making friends and small talk and that kind of thing? In which case, you're probably going to be benefiting from more common words or more jargon for your field than, again, animals or vegetables. I know we've all been there, spent the day, we're like, today, I'm going to do all the colors. It's just going to be the day of colors. I'm going to get magenta. I'm going to learn how to say these weird ones. And for what? But adherence is really hard too, being consistent with it, trying to stick with it if you're not living in a culture, and being able to immerse yourself without living there, and feeling the need, motivating yourself, all that kind of stuff. And being efficient with your priorities too, is also thinking about, I have to go back to the pronunciation also, is it going to benefit you to have a solid accent? Does it really matter for you? In many cases, the pronunciation will kind of propel you forward and give you a little bit more confidence, because people will see you as some kind of talented speaker, confident speaker. And you can start, it's not about sounding like a native speaker again, but it's just when you learn the new vocabulary that you employ the proper pronunciation from the beginning. Because as we know, most people tend to say, well, I'll learn the pronunciation later because I'm focusing on my verbs and my vocab. Well, you should focus on those things. You should focus on everything, but learning the sound patterns, because again, from Spanish to French and all these languages we speak, Arabic, I mean, they have such different concepts, and certain sounds that we think are the same are not. So having that all in mind, I'll stop talking about that. But it's important to have all those things as a package.
Yeah, I think my advice would be to learn those things simultaneously, right? Because, for example, when I decided to start to learn French, I decided that every resource that I was going to use, I needed something to read and something to listen to, right? Mm-hmm. Like I didn't wanted to just be reading French without being sure about how to pronounce those words.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
it's that's just actually, like using audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a fantastic point that you just made, Henry. It's true. It's really important to have a holistic approach, and Ruben was touching on this as well. Right from the start, it's important to learn correct pronunciation, correct grammar, the necessary vocabulary. You know, it seems overwhelming, and it seems like a lot at first because there's so much you have to learn, but it's worth it. It's worth taking the time to do it right, because the second you start learning things incorrectly, it becomes that much harder to actually learn it correctly like you wanted to, because you have to think about it this way. If you wrote something down and then it wasn't the way you wanted it, you then have to cross it out and rewrite it, and your paper looks messy now there's ink all over it. So don't do that to your minds. Don't make things harder than you need to be. Learning a language already can be hard sometimes. It's better to just let it be fun. You know, that's one of the most important things, I think, when you learn a language. Make sure it is fun. Mm-hmm. It's not necessary to always do the things that you feel like, I have to learn this. This is extremely important for me. And be kind of mean to yourself and not let yourself enjoy it at all. Because, you know, life's kind of short. If you're not enjoying something, some would argue why do. I'm not going to we're not going to get into that right now, but I do think it's extremely important to enjoy learning the language, because if you do like learning it, you are that much more inclined to put more time and energy in it. It's really important to find ways, and there's always a way to make a language fun. All you have to do is explore your interests and outlets within that language.
So talking about that, about making fun the process of learning a language, again, what I did with French was to make it as an excuse to approach to other things that I really enjoy, like movies and music. So I started to look for music in French, to watch more French movies.
That's excellent. That's a great way to do that. Also, for example, so sometimes you can do so I have some strange ways of preparing for classes sometimes. So I have this one student from India who likes to have these really in-depth intellectual conversations about history and all kinds of things. And I love history, and I studied history, but I was never a specialist of Roman history. So to brush up on Roman history, I read a few articles and listened to a few podcasts in Spanish, Portuguese, and French, the 3 other languages I speak, as a means of working my linguistic skills while preparing for a lesson that I was going to teach in English, which sounds kind of crazy, and I don't know, maybe I am crazy, but it was a great way for me to learn while preparing to be able to teach someone else. And it was really fun for me. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting topic for me, so I enjoyed it. And it's just like you were talking about, finding your interests. if you want to learn something, how many of us, when we want to say, oh, what's that? Or what is this concept? Can I brush up on this? How many of us go to Wikipedia and look at the article?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever notice the language bar on the left? Did you ever notice that almost always in Wikipedia, there are options for many different languages.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to learn it, why always go to Wikipedia in your native language? Why not use this as a learning opportunity to practice your English, French, Spanish, Japanese, whatever language you want to learn, as a way of learning new vocabulary, encouraging thought in the language, and getting to the point where you can have a conversation about a new topic in the language.
That's great.
Well, something similar to what you're saying is to learn a third language using the second one you learned as the reference language. So, for example, that was my case with French and with German too. For example, I used Duolingo to learn German, but from English, not with Spanish, because they have more like common roots for some words, and I feel like more in contact still with English, and I enjoy it much more that way.
There are a couple fantastic things about what you just talked about. So some people say, oh, don't learn multiple languages at the same time. You'll get confused. Maybe you will, but in my experience, you won't. You'll be fine. But the important thing is that, so it's true. English is linguistically more similar to German. So that makes it a great reason to do that. Also, and this is very important, because they're similar, and neither one is your native language, you're more likely to get them confused. So if you learn one from the other, at the moment you're learning, you are already differentiating the two, which is perfect for you, and it will avoid that confusion. So that's actually a fantastic technique, Henry.
Yeah, I think one other thing too is, keeping it relevant to your life. Making it fun is a great tip, but not having to go out of your way to learn a language. And so some people suggested that I learn or that I practice reading a newspaper in a foreign language, in Spanish or etc. That's a good idea, but I don't read the newspaper in English, and so that's not for. I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, I'm updated in the news and the ways that we all are these days, but I don't go to news websites specifically and like peruse articles, nor do I open a paper and read it that way. And so for me to do that in a foreign language is just out of my own character. It's out of my own lifestyle. And so that doesn't work for me. But finding something that's relevant for you. So if you like watching movies to begin with, switching it up to a French movie makes perfect sense. Like, why wouldn't you do that anyway? So, yeah.
So this is a fantastic question that Ruben and then Yusuf asked. So what suggestions would you all give for people starting to learn a new language at this stage of our lives?
I put our life. Everybody's at different stages in their lives, but I just Yusuf did I think he left us video, or his audio left, but I didn't realize you can put a question on the side there, not in the comments. So if any of you guys have questions for the masses, don't make the same mistake I did. But yeah, so if anyone has anything to add to it, either in the comments or to answer this question too. Or you can join us. Yusuf, you can come back, or we can have other people just kind of chime in too.
These are some from Tu Naloka. Naloka. Search about a good site that you learn from, and what you learn, you have to practice it, not only memorize it. That's a good point. It is important to practice. It's like what Henry was talking about earlier, using it, not just learning it, but using it too. And watching movies, listening to songs, that stuff's, it's all fun. Why not do things that are fun? That can help you learn.
Can we talk about mnemonic devices for a second? This term, mnemonic devices, I read it in here in the chat. It's a funny spelling in English, right? Mnemonic. This idea that you use a memory trick or something that reminds you of the word, sounds like it in a different language. You think of a picture, other things like that. I think sharing our mnemonic devices might be kind of funny too, because there's certain things that I do this a lot because I think learning a language and improving your memory have a lot in common, and being able to retain information and not just, again, rote memorization is somewhat effective, but the idea of just having a sharper memory, just it saves you time. And instead of going back and saying, what was that word? I keep forgetting that word. And so there are certain things that stick out in my mind. They might not even be languages that I speak fluently. There's one word in Japanese. I'll teach it to you guys. I wonder if it doesn't even matter if you speak it. You won't forget it ever. The word in Japanese is shigoto. 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 And it means work or job. So shigoto, I'm like, immediately the first thing I thought was like a Spanish accent. I was like, shigoto work. Shigoto work. Where does she go? She got to work. She got to work. And so I was like, that for me, that was like the easiest. Sometimes they just come. The best ones are the ones that kind of just happen to be like really quick. And so shigoto, and you see it like written in Japanese, shigoto work. And it was even written out in that order. So I was just like, all right, I'll never forget that. It was just an easy one for me. Do you guys have any like that?
I started to do that much more with German than what I do with French, and I like it because it's part of my personality to be funny with play words and things like that. So it's a good way to memorize words.
Shigoto.
I can't think of an example.
I
can't think of an example that's quite as good as shigoto.
I got a bunch of these too.
Ruben.
Yeah.
I shared one with you. It was for the word for potato in German. Do you remember?
Oh yeah, Kartoffeln.
Yeah.
I forgot. Kartoffel. What was the? I forgot
That's
the trick.
word.
I remember the word, but I didn't remember the trick.
Remember the word?
Kartoffel.
Yes.
Cartful. I don't remember exactly what you. For some reason, I remember the word. I don't speak German, by the way. I didn't know that.
With that one, I was thinking in Spanish. So when you say carto, it sounds like the word cartón, which is the material for boxes, right?
Right.
And fel sounds like the last part of Eiffel Tower. So I picture an Eiffel Tower with potatoes made of, how do you say carton in English?
Cardboard.
Cardboard.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There's a lot of science behind memory that talks about how, when you read stories about or listen to interviews about these guys who memorize thousands and thousands of numbers in a row, part of how they do that is imagining insane things like that. Because when the stranger something is, if something is really hilarious or ridiculous or gross or just anything that surprises you, that gives you an emotional reaction, even if it's just silly, you are more likely to remember it. It's a funny thing about our memories and how that is. So I try to make my classes that way as much as possible, so that no one's ever going to forget that word because of the extent of strangeness involved in the particular situation. But in terms of mnemonic devices, I thought of one. I remember in French, the words that, or the adjectives that come before nouns rather than after nouns are bags adjectives. They have to do with beauty, age, goodness, or size.
Oh, like an acronym.
Exactly. It's an acronym rather than a normal mnemonic.
I like
device.
it.
Yeah. So any adjectives that have to do with those categories of things go before the noun. Anything else comes after.
I like that. So, beauty. What is it? Beauty, age,
goodness.
So things that are good, or
things
bad.
that are good, like literally the word "good" counts, or excellent, or fantastic.
Good to know.
La bonne personne. So the adjective is before the noun, right?
Before,
okay.
exactly.
I never noticed that.
See, we're already helping each other, and it's not even 2016 yet.
That's really fun.
So,
yeah.
Speaking of which, why don't we talk about 2016, which is coming up in a month and a half or so?
Yeah.
So,
what specifically about it?
What's going to be different about language learning?
Oh man!
Or what is happening now?
Everything.
And what will happen in the immediate future?
Everything is changing.
Things will change. What will change?
I don't know. You know, honestly, I don't think people are changing as much. I think the process is changing. I think the resources are changing. I think people are learning more about it and spreading it. Like things like resources like Blab, Go Speaky that Yusuf mentioned before. You know, Memrise. I've used Memrise, Memrize, I believe it is, or SE maybe,
Yep.
but it's
I think it's
SE for
so.
learning languages. Of course, people have these apps on their phones as well. That's another thing too, is having more interactive applications for smartphones. I think that's something that will be hopefully utilized more. Games in foreign languages, the ability to change your whatever your applications are or websites or etc. into a different language too. Netflix subtitles might get better. All that kind of stuff too. Hopefully, because that's never.
Unfortunately, here in Morocco, Netflix is not allowed here in Morocco. That's why we have to use VPN.
There's no Netflix in Morocco?
Yeah, but we use Popcorn Time. It's
okay.
It has an alternative app.
What's StudyBlue.com?
StudyBlue is to memorize new words, vocabularies, something like that.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for sharing the resource with us.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think 2016 will bring us? What will Santa bring for Christmas?
But
I think
I still have some problems. Yeah, what? I say that I still have some problems with English. That's why I don't understand too much, and I stuck sometimes.
You're doing great. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad
you're doing fantastic. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
One of the most important things about this is that you try, and
Yeah.
you're communicating effectively. And even if you don't understand 100% of what we say, as long as you can follow what we're talking about, you can still participate. And it's wonderful to have you. It's really great to have this many voices in this conversation. So something that I think is, you're welcome. Something that I think is happening right now with language learning and will continue to happen in the immediate future is kind of a change in the ways in which we can learn a language, partly because of a greater number of resources is available, but also because of all of these applications that we can now use for practice, because computers are getting better and better at figuring out the way that most people learn. Everyone learns a little differently, but the way that the majority of people learn, because computers are getting better and better at figuring this out. Software is improving.
Yeah.
Interfaces are becoming more and more user-friendly in some ways. I think not in 2016, but maybe in 2020, 2025, more and more, I think we will rely on technology, software, computers to continue our language learning and accelerate the process at which we learn languages. I don't think that means that people like Ruben and me will become obsolete. Ruben, there will always be a need for native speaking coaches, for people who want to continue to improve, and also to help guide you through the software, help guide you through these new techniques, these new strategies of learning, and all of that. So I imagine if we look way into the future to 2050, I imagine a computer analyzing your brain waves and seeing what is working and isn't working, and optimizing learning processes to that kind of extent. But that's very far in the future, and that will take a long time for us to ever get there, if we do. So, but just for 2016, I think apps are going to continue to expand. I think the importance of learning foreign languages will just continue to increase as we become more and more globalized.
Devoted.
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you just reminded me of something that was, instead of analyzing brain waves, I was thinking about analyzing sound waves. Because, of course, voice recognition software it's not perfect right now. It's really hard for us to say, not for recognizing as much as for giving you feedback, for learning a language. It's great for saying it's right or wrong, right? Just like, language courses, the big guys have these they pay millions of dollars to implement these software components to their courses, and there's always pronunciation involved, and it's usually not a great way to give you, again, feedback. They'll say it's right or wrong, and they'll have some kind of computerized, auto response. But I was thinking about, being able to see an accent. You know how we can see sound waves, you can see the shape of the vowel. And I wonder if that plays a role in people studying phonetics that know, how you could use that as a language learner to your advantage. And say, okay, I can see, like physically, I can literally see the sound wave of a native speaker, and I can see mine, and to try to match that in some way. So it kind of takes I don't have an ear for the language, or I don't, whatever. I'm not a language person, and just make a game out of it almost, where you're kind of trying to match the same shapes, match the same sounds. That would be kind of cool. I want to partner with somebody who does that.
The technology is there right now in terms of if we're just matching pitches and rhythms. In terms of actual accents, that's a little harder. But pitches and rhythms, which is a portion of accents, we absolutely have the technology with sound waves to compare that.
Yeah.
And I think there will come a time, maybe this is in 2050 again, in which that is analyzed by an app, and they make a recording of your mouth. They take an X-ray of your face to see what's going on inside, to see if things are lined up correctly, if your tongue's in the right place, and all of that. But we'll see.
I think in the future, we're going to have two things in terms of technology. Things like what Ruben is describing, like softwares to improve the process of learning a language, but also technologies to kind of eliminate the need of learning a language. Like, for example, what YouTube already is doing with closed captions, lively, right? So, and for example, on Skype, I read that they were trying to give you kind of the same with conversations.
Oh, wow.
On live conversations. So I think some people is going to develop much more that too. Like, you don't need to know the language. We're going to give you subtitles, or I don't know, a robot voice saying translate it for you, or something like that.
But does this actually change the way that we learn a language, though? I think that at the end of the day, does the technology advancement do anything for our advancement as humans processing the language?
Well, I think it can. So it absolutely can. And when you learn a new language, you're not just learning how to express yourself in a way that other people will understand. You're also learning how to express yourself in a completely different way. You're able to think in a way that you never could have imagined before, simply because it wasn't within your way of understanding reality until you had this language. Like, all kinds of it can be as little things like if there are two words for something in your language but only one in another language, or the other way around, that completely opens your mind of a new way of seeing things. Or if a particular grammatical tense exists in one language and not another, it's the same kind of thing. But yeah, related to what Henry was saying before, have either of you ever heard of the author Douglas Adams? He wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Of course, yeah.
So I don't know if you guys ever read these books, but there's this tiny little fish that people put in their ear. This is science fiction, but they put it in their ear, and it eats sound waves in any language, and it excretes your native language into your mind. So anytime you hear someone speaking something else, you automatically hear your own language in your head. So who knows? Maybe one day we will arrive at the point where we have a little microchip that we can put in our ear and have that. But I think we're a ways away from there at this point.
Love it. Yeah, it's almost like, it's a fairly new science. I think linguistics in general, and studying how people learn a language, how people learn a second language, importantly, and people often compare the two. Well, like Yusuf was saying before, do we learn a second language like we learn a first language? In most cases we don't, but we have advantages. We have the ability to use our native language as adults, for example, somebody who's already learned a first language, to relate that second language to translate. You always say, well, immersing students and trying to make them only speak the language, only speak Spanish, but you have to translate. You have to somehow translate those words. But it's just, of course, being able to do all those things is it's not easy.
Of course, yeah. Well, I think we're just about out of time for today. This has been a fantastic discussion, and I'd love to talk about this for hours, but I think at some point we have to stop for anyone who wants to watch the recording. So we all have lives to continue. But you should all join us next week, possibly at the same time. We will confirm probably on Monday or something. But Ruben and I would love to do this again, and we would love to have all of you and anyone else who's watching the recording to join us.
I'll say one last thing.
Comments? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I made a short list going back to this whole how we learn a language faster. For me, it happens by memorizing certain fixed phrases that I use in English, my native language, all the time. And I take those 15 phrases and I translate those into, if I were to learn a new language, German, tomorrow that I don't speak at all, I would translate those 15 phrases first and subscribe to Linguistics SF. Follow me here. Send me a message. I'll send you the sheet if you're interested in that too. It'll be my 15, but maybe that'll help you think of some phrases for yourself.
And don't forget to follow Linguas Francas as well for all kinds of information about language learning and linguistics and these topics. And we should have more great conversations in the future.
Yeah. Can't wait. Thanks again.
Yeah, I'm in for those.
I'm sorry, Henry?
I said I'm in for those.
Yeah.
Great.
Looking
forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Henry. Pleasure to talk with you guys. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome.
Take
care. It was
care.
a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
You too. Bye.